We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house. That's what my sister, Sarah, told our mother, Janice, who was battling advanced dementia, her eyes distant and clouded. What Sarah didn't know, what she absolutely couldn't have known, was the secret I'd been keeping, a secret that would unravel her carefully constructed scheme and expose the true depths of her greed. Was I wrong for letting her dig her own grave, for watching her parade her cruelty before dropping the bombshell? Tell me honestly, would you have done the same thing? It all started subtly, as these things often do. My mother, Janice, was a vibrant woman, a force of nature really, who had built a small empire of her own through sheer grit and an uncanny knack for real estate. Her pride and joy, however, wasn't a sprawling mansion, but a quaint, albeit luxurious, beach house in Malibu. It was her sanctuary, the place she'd retreat to after closing a difficult deal, the place where we'd spent countless summers, the air thick with the scent of salt and sunscreen, the sound of waves, a constant lullaby. When my father passed away suddenly 10 years ago, the beach house became even more significant. It was where she felt his presence most strongly, where she could sit on the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues, and feel a sense of peace. Sarah and I, her only children, grew up understanding the importance of that house, but as adults, our paths diverged significantly. I, Mark, always took after my father, steady, pragmatic, a bit of a homebody. I pursued a career in architecture, preferring the quiet satisfaction of creating something tangible and lasting. Sarah, on the other hand, was a whirlwind, a dazzling socialite who thrived on attention and luxury. She married well to a successful, albeit equally shallow, investment banker named Richard, and their lives were a constant parade of exotic vacations, designer clothes, and exclusive parties. There was always a subtle tension between us, a silent competition that I largely ignored, but Sarah seemed to fuel. She always felt she deserved more, that she was owed a life of effortless extravagance, and that somehow my mother's assets were her birthright. Our mother's diagnosis of early-onset Alzheimer's 3 years ago hit us both hard, though in different ways. For me, it was a gut-wrenching descent into grief, watching the woman who had always been so sharp and independent slowly fade away. For Sarah, I suspect it was less about grief and more about opportunity. She began to take a more active role in Mom's finances, ostensibly to help manage things. At first, I was grateful. I was busy with my own demanding career and a young family, and Sarah seemed genuinely eager to assist. She moved Mom's accounts to a new bank, consolidating them, she said, for easier management. She started going through Mom's paperwork, talking about streamlining her estate. I voiced some minor concerns, reminding her of Mom's deep attachment to the beach house, but Sarah always had a ready explanation, a perfectly reasonable sounding justification for every decision. "It's all for Mom's benefit, Mark," she'd say, her voice dripping with saccharine sincerity. "We need to ensure her comfort and security." The progression of Mom's illness was relentless. Within 2 years, she was a shadow of her former self, her memories fragmented, her conversations often nonsensical. She was still living in her main house, but with round-the-clock care, and her trips to the beach house became rarer, eventually stopping altogether. It broke my heart to see her decline, to witness the vibrant woman I knew disappear piece by piece. During this time, I was trying to balance work, family, and numerous visits to Mom, ensuring her caregivers were attentive and that she was comfortable. Sarah, meanwhile, became increasingly detached from Mom's day-to-day care, delegating more and more to me, while simultaneously tightening her grip on Mom's financial affairs. Then came the first red flag, a small tremor that hinted at the earthquake to come. I received a strange call from a real estate agent I knew, a friendly fellow named David who specialized in high-end properties. He called to confirm my mother's intention to sell the Malibu beach house. I was stunned. Sell the beach house? I repeated, my mind reeling. David, my mother would never sell that house. It's her most cherished possession. David, sounding uncomfortable, explained that Sarah had approached him, claiming to have power of attorney and expressing an urgent desire to list the property. He said he had felt uneasy about it, knowing Mom's attachment to the house, and had decided to call me directly. My blood ran cold. I thanked David profusely and immediately called Sarah. She feigned outrage. "Mark, how could you accuse me of such a thing? I was merely exploring options for Mom's future, considering her needs. We might need to liquidate some assets to cover her rising medical costs. You..." No. Her voice was sharp, defensive, and completely unconvincing. I told her in no uncertain terms that the beach house was not to be touched. She backed down for a while, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. I started doing my own digging, discreetly, carefully. I tried to get a clearer picture of Mom's financial situation, but Sarah had made it incredibly difficult. She'd changed all the passwords, moved everything around, and whenever I asked for detailed statements, she'd provide heavily redacted summaries or claim the full documents were too complicated. For me to understand, the truth, I suspected, was far simpler. She was hiding something. The biggest clue, however, came from an unexpected source. One day, while visiting Mom, I noticed a stack of old photo albums on her bedside table, albums I hadn't seen in years. As I flipped through them, reminiscing about happier times, a small, official-looking document slipped out from between two pages. It was a power of attorney document, dated 5 years ago, granting me full power of attorney over Mom's financial and legal affairs. Sarah, apparently, had no idea it existed. Mom, in one of her last lucid moments, had entrusted me, the steady, reliable son, with her protection. And in a stroke of genius, or perhaps just fading memory, she had never told Sarah. This was my trump card, a secret weapon that would allow me to protect my mother from her own daughter. But I decided not to reveal it, not yet. I wanted to see how far Sarah would go. I carefully put the document back, feigning ignorance during my conversations with Sarah. I played along, letting her believe she was in control. I continued to ask about Mom's finances, feigning concern, letting Sarah feed me her carefully constructed narratives about medical expenses and financial planning. I knew she was bleeding Mom's accounts dry, but I didn't have solid proof of her direct involvement in the sale of the beach house yet. That's why I started monitoring the real estate market in Malibu, specifically for properties matching Mom's house. It was a long shot, but I had a gut feeling, and sure enough, a few months later, a listing appeared. No address, just a beautiful description and photos that were unmistakably Mom's beach house. The listing agent was David. I called David again, this time with a very different tone. I explained the situation, my voice low and urgent. He was horrified, realizing he'd been duped. He confirmed that Sarah had presented him with what appeared to be a legitimate, newly created power of attorney document, granting her control. He also told me that the sale was in its final stages. An all-cash offer had been accepted, and closing was set for the following week. This was it. Sarah was about to commit grand theft, disguised as filial duty. I had to act, but I wanted to do it in a way that would expose her completely, not just to me, but to everyone, including our ailing mother, if only for a brief, lucid moment. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. I wanted her to be absolutely certain she had won before I pulled the rug out from under her. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, holding the legal document that proved I, not Sarah, was Mom's true legal guardian, with the power to stop this entire charade. I knew Sarah was selling Mom's most cherished possession, liquidating assets for her own selfish gain, leaving Mom with nothing but the increasingly expensive medical bills. I had let her believe she was invincible, watching her arrogant satisfaction grow with each passing day. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted her immediately, or would you have waited, like I did, for the perfect moment to deliver a taste of her own medicine? I decided to wait. I let the days tick by, knowing the closing date was fast approaching. I visited Mom daily, talking to her, showing her old photos of the beach house, trying to conjure a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Sarah, meanwhile, was insufferable. She strutted around, making veiled comments about future financial security and smart decisions. She even had the audacity to suggest that Mom's main house might be too much to maintain, and that perhaps it should be sold too, once the beach house proceeds were secured. The arrogance was astounding. I just smiled, a tight, unreadable smile, and nodded, letting her believe she was winning. The day before the scheduled closing, Sarah came to Mom's house. She was beaming, practically vibrating with excitement. She brought a bottle of expensive champagne, a rare treat, and insisted we all celebrate. Mom, lost in her own world, barely registered her presence. "We're going tomorrow, Mom," Sarah announced, her voice ringing with triumphant false cheer. "I've sold your beach house. It was for your own good, you know, to make sure you're taken care of." She even went on to describe the buyer a wealthy tech mogul, eager for a quick, all-cash deal. She detailed the selling price, a truly staggering sum, and painted a picture of Mom living out her days in blissful, financially secure comfort. It was a performance, a meticulously crafted lie, designed to make her look like the dutiful daughter, when in reality she was a predator. I let her finish. I watched her revel in her perceived victory, her eyes gleaming with avarice. Then, calmly, after she had poured the champagne and raised her glass, I spoke. "That's wonderful, Sarah," I said, my voice cutting through her monologue, soft but firm. "It's truly admirable, your dedication to Mom's financial well-being." Sarah preened, taking a sip of champagne. "But there's just one small problem," I continued, pulling the old, yellowed power of attorney document from my jacket pocket. "You see, Mom actually gave me power of attorney 5 years ago. This document, signed and notarized, designates me as the sole decision maker for her finances." I laid the document on the table, carefully smoothing out the creases. Sarah's face went from triumphant glee to utter horror in a fraction of a second. The color drained from her cheeks, and her jaw dropped. The champagne flute in her hand trembled, spilling a few drops onto the polished table. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice a reedy whisper. "That's impossible. I have power of attorney." "Oh, you have a power of attorney, all right," I replied, my voice still calm, but with an underlying edge of steel. "The one you had forged, perhaps, because this one, Sarah, is the legitimate one. And according to this, I have the authority to revoke any and all financial decisions made on Mom's behalf, including the sale of her beloved beach house." I watched as the realization dawned on her, a slow, agonizing understanding of the trap she had walked into. "I've already contacted David, the agent. He's been informed of the fraud. The sale is off, and the buyers have been told the truth. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the distant chirping of crickets. Sarah stood there, frozen, her face contorted in a mask of disbelief and fury. You knew," she whispered, her voice laced with venom. You let me go through all of this. I wanted to see how far you'd go, Sarah," I said, meeting her furious gaze without flinching. "I wanted to see if there was any shred of decency left in you. Turns out there wasn't. You were ready to strip Mom of her last cherished possession for your own selfish gain, and that, Sarah, is unforgivable." The confrontation that followed was brutal. Sarah screamed, she raged, she accused me of jealousy and manipulation. She even tried to snatch the document from the table, but I was faster. I informed her that I had already filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, and that the forged power of attorney, along with evidence of her siphoning funds from Mom's accounts, was now in the hands of the authorities. Richard, her husband, who had been conspicuously absent during this entire scheme, suddenly appeared, looking bewildered and terrified. He quickly grasped the gravity of the situation and, to my surprise, sided with me, realizing the legal quagmire they were in. He knew his reputation and their lavish lifestyle were on the line. The aftermath was messy, but ultimately satisfying. The sale of the beach house was officially canceled, much to the relief of David and the chagrin of the would-be buyers. Adult Protective Services launched a full investigation, uncovering a trail of fraudulent transactions and misappropriated funds that Sarah had been diverting from Mom's accounts for months. She was stripped of any access to Mom's finances and faced serious legal repercussions. Richard, unwilling to risk his own career, eventually divorced her, leaving her with a fraction of the wealth she had so desperately coveted. Sarah, once the queen of her social circle, found herself ostracized, her reputation in tatters. She tried to fight back, to smear my name, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Mom, in her fragile state, never fully grasped the extent of Sarah's betrayal, which in a way was a blessing. She continued to live peacefully in her own home, surrounded by attentive caregivers and, of course, me. The beach house, her sanctuary, remained hers, a tangible link to her past, a monument to a love that transcended memory. I visit her often, bringing her old photos and telling her stories, even if her eyes don't always fully connect with mine. I tell her about the waves, the sunsets, the feel of the sand between our toes, and sometimes, for a fleeting moment, I see a spark of recognition, a faint smile that warms my heart. So, that's the story of how I saved my mother's beach house, and in doing so, exposed the true nature of my own sister. It was a painful lesson, a stark reminder that even within family, greed can corrupt and destroy. I lost a sister that day, but I saved my mother's legacy and perhaps a small piece of my own soul. Like this video if you were on my side in this crazy family drama. Subscribe for more stories like this, where truth is stranger than fiction and family secrets unravel in the most unexpected ways. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What would you have done differently? I'll see you all in the next story.